For some of them, it is super hard.
Mm-hmm.
And for some, yeah, it's interesting. I had a student, I give an assignment in an upper year where you have to, I call the assignment Imago Dei, and you have to make an image of God. Or you have to make an image about how it's impossible to make an image of God. And it's a great conversation because I show them, let's talk about the iconoclastic tradition and why, what does it do? And what lessons do we learn from it? What's valuable in it? But then we also look at the rebuttals and we say, well, Jesus had a body. If we refuse the physicality of art, are we kind of denying something about the bodiliness of Jesus? How do we deal with that? Do we have a moral obligation to try and tell this story given our medium that we work in? So it's really interesting. And then the best work actually falls in the middle. So I give them this kind of either or, but I'm kind of suggesting, right? Mm-hmm. There's strengths to both sides. So the best thing is when you make an image that within its own structure acknowledges that God is beyond image making. Right? So you put the beyondness, you question your imagery even as you make it. And that gets really interesting because it ends up pointing beyond itself more. Mm-hmm. And there's a tradition for that too. So kind of the apophatic, tradition of God is beyond what we can even name, mm-hmm. right? And that thread is all through Scripture. It's a sub-theme. The dominant theme is God is knowable because God's revealing himself. But there's always a sub-theme that says we can never, God's never in our pocket. God's always beyond what we can pin down. And so that's part of our role, I think, in the school. Because if you're at a university, people are excited about knowledge. They want to name things. If you're in a Christian Reformed school, people want to have rational axioms that they can have a rational faith.
Right.
And then part of our studio is just to say, there's mystery, there's imagination, God will not be pinned down, and the rest of the school needs to hear us, because they need it. It's a counterbalance to some of the other stuff that they learn. And not to say that anything's wrong in what they're learning, but it's just like, if you're going to do a community, we need the theater students and the art students in the school.
Mm-hmm.
And the literature people. I don't think music plays the same role, just in how it functions in our school. Yeah. It's more of let's sing the doxology. It's more it's less about the questions.
Mm. It's pretty much what it's like at my school too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's so much brilliant music to perform and to sing. And if you don't have a really strong composing aspect to the school, how do our contemporary questions have a play, right? Yeah. But they can. But anyway, that might just be my little jab at our music department. But this is an anonymous interview, so it's okay. But yeah, no, I think it's So I teach mostly I teach studio, but it's a small place, so we end up sort of teaching everything. I teach a faith and art class. And part of that is, asking people where you're from, what's your background, how is this understood in your church? And it's really diverse, right? Because there's a lot of thinking about visual culture going on in more conservative churches these days, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
So some of them come from places like that.
Yeah.
And then other ones, and did I mention this story? But Yeah, I had a student